Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto. Kicked in the buns for not selling as many buns. Go figure. The corporate world can be so cruel, and doesn't McDonald's, now former CEO Don Thompson, know it? Leaving because customers just weren't coming. Fried because he just wasn't selling enough fries. Happens all the time, of course, in the private sector. Rarely, though, if ever, in the public sector. In fact, just the opposite in government, because the same folks who botched healthcare.gov, well, now they're being rehired by the IRS to work their magic there. Talk about inbred incompetence. Far from condemning it, rewarding it. So figure this. A hard-charging CEO is out, even though his company still made $4.76 billion last year. And not so hard-charging bureaucrats get to screw up another day in another place, despite losing hundreds of millions of dollars these past few years. Now, the difference, of course, is McDonald's shareholders pay for that executive's missteps. We pick up the tab for bureaucrats' missteps. To John Layfield and Katherine Timpf on what Uncle Sam can learn from Ronald McDonald. At least in Ronald McDonald's self, he kicks himself in the buns. But what do you make of this, John?
Well, I think if you take the Fortune 500 CEOs and their executive vice presidents or upper management, and you look at them and you think how many of those guys could run something in politics, and you would think nearly all of them or most of all of those guys could do that. But you look at politicians and you ask how many of those guys, the bureaucrats, could do the job of these Fortune 500 CEOs, and you think none or very few of them. And I think that's the difference. The private enterprise is a true meritocracy. If you don't do well, there's people that are moving up in there. Politics is simply a favor system. It's the Isaiah Thomas symptom. You can fail all you want. If you know the right people, you stay in power.
Well, whatever's going on here, Katherine, defies description because the tenure of a CEO is getting shorter and shorter. He or she is likely to be on the job under 24 months. Now, in case of Mr. Thompson, it was closer to 3 years, but he's out. Whereas some of these bureaucrats who came up with health care and everything else, not only do they live to fight another day, but live to fight another decade at a minimum. What's the difference?
Right. Well, this guy, the entire time, almost the entire time he was CEO, the company was declining. So he has to go, or else they're going to not make as much cash. That's how that works. Now, the IRS, their decisions aren't really tied. It doesn't really matter. They're always going to be around. They could have hired my grandma to do their technology services. They're still not going anywhere. The amount of cash they make doesn't depend on them making these kind of decisions, right? So why wouldn't they make them based on other reasons? And these are clearly political reasons. We don't even really maybe know why, but definitely not the best person for the job, and they had to know that, obviously.
Well, you know what I'm wondering? I try to give every benefit of the doubt to this, John, and I thought, well, they're not trying to hire extra personnel. They're not trying to hire more in the public sector. So what they do instead is they swap public sector workers from one field, let's say the healthcare.gov, to the IRS, as if moving pieces on a chessboard makes that chessboard any more appealing.
Sure, it's all in who you know. I mean, look at the ambassador that just went to Argentina, doesn't even speak Spanish. The ambassador just went to Poland. And look, this administration is not new to this. This is really political favors. These people have connections. They failed in one area. They simply get the decks of the Titanic are simply reshuffled. The chairs are, rather, on the deck are simply reshuffled. That's what's being done. They're not being replaced. It's a matter of who you know, and if you know the right people, you simply stay in power.
You know, I look at this, so, Katherine, I think I always hear people who hear these comparisons say, yeah, but the McDonald's guy is going to leave with a tidy fortune. You pick on government workers who don't make a fraction of that and hold them to the same standard. What do you say?
Well, these people are being held to a different standard in terms of the fact that they were able to mess up way more and still be working. It wasn't just HHS. It was also in Vermont. It was also in Massachusetts. Audits and investigations revealed tens of thousands of coding errors that they put in there that led to vulnerabilities in the system. This is directly their fault, and they tried to blame it on other people, saying it was politics, it was management. No, you putting errors into the coding system is your fault. So they, in addition to a competency problem, have an accountability problem. You would never be working at all in the private sector with a record like that.
Guys, great takes on all of this. Meanwhile, forget